Hi and welcome to PolyOriginals with Fiona Abel-Smith. So today I thought we'd have a bit of fun. We're going to make two canes, this large one here, and then we're going to make another one, smaller one, same sort of pattern, but treat it slightly differently. And then we're going to put them together to create this nice effect as a pendant. And we've added a little attachment in the back, so you can add a chain or a cord to it to make it a nice hanging pendant. It's quite an easy one to do, this one, don't need a lot of equipment, and to start on that, let's take you through what we do actually need to complete this project today. Okay, so here are the tools we're going to need for today's project. Pretty standard tools for polymer clay. So everything hopefully you'll have easily to hand. First thing, not forgetting, always very important, a pasta machine. We'll be doing quite a lot of putting things through the pasta machine, so having one of those will make a huge difference rather than having to roll it all by hand. Then we need some form of polymer clay blade, a roller, polymer clay roller, this size or a larger size, doesn't matter, just something to give you a bit of a roll as we go work through. Craft knife is always handy, and we're going to use that to cut round a shape later on. Knitting needle just comes in handy, all sorts of things for smoothing over joins and also for holding the little hook in place that we're going to use in the back of our piece at the end. To get a nice smooth finish to our piece, we're going to need a little piece of some form of baking parchment, greaseproof paper, wax paper, just something, not very much, just enough to go over the piece that we're making. And then to smooth down, one of these stainless steel soaps. Again, does make a lot of difference if you've got one. If you haven't, then we can do the same with just using the roller. So where I use this, just use your roller in a round smoothing motion instead. And then just to create the little hook on the back of the piece, you can just use a jump ring, so various sizes, just use one of those. Or what I've used in today's piece is just a very small piece. It's actually aluminium wire, because obviously it comes in nice colours, so I've used a purple piece just to match with the colours I'm doing today. And you get it various sizes, various colours. But ordinary wire, again, will work just as well. So anything you've got to hand, a head pin. If you've got a head pin, you can use the wire from that, just make it into a curl. And if you're doing something like that, then obviously these sort of pliers will come in handy. So I've got round nose, the cutting pliers, and then just the flat-headed pliers. When we're baking our piece, a little piece of card will be fantastic, and all we're going to do with the card is we're going to curve it into a bit of a curved shape, just so that your piece can rest on the curve. As always, you know me, I use these measuring sheets. This is one I've laminated, and it's in an inch format, and it's freely downloadable from www.printablepaper.net. And the other thing, foil. I'm just going to tent my piece in foil when it's in the oven, so having foil is fantastic. Now, coming on to the template I'm going to use, this is one I bought fairly recently. This is a brand new set of templates that have come out. This is from PC UK Tools, and this is set number 6. And it's sort of like an egg shape, I don't know if you can see it there. But the thing I love about this set, and what sort of has really set them apart from me, is the fact that you also get, let me show you the whole bag of goodies here, you also get all the inserts that fit inside all of your shapes. So today, for instance, I'm using the second biggest one in this set, and I'm not actually going to be using this template bit, I'm going to be using this. This, when it comes, like these pieces in here, has actually got a sheet of opaque white on it, and part of me wishes now that I'd left that on. I'm not sure how it would react with the polymer clay to use it, but of course if it's left opaque, you can then put this over your piece to really see clearly what your piece is going to look like. And then this piece I'm going to use to put over the top, and then we're going to cut around the edge. Because I don't know about the rest of you, but I find, although templates are fantastic and I use them a lot, when you're running around the inside edge with your craft knife, it's very easy to just pull your knife into the inside. And also when you run around and then pull away, where you've cut down, it's giving you a little raised edge right on the where you've cut around your piece. Whereas doing it on this, as you'll see when we get to the piece later, you can see really clearly where you're putting your piece on. You can run your craft knife around the edge really easily, and it doesn't give you that raised edge. I'll put the link to these in all the details below the video, and say I'm just loving using them. Okay, so I think that's all the equipment we need for today's session, so I'll now take you on to the clays. So this is the clay we're going to be using today. I'm using Fimo Soft, but any of the brands of polymer clay will work well for this technique. These are all the colours we're going to be using, and each of these blocks are 1/2 ounce, 14 grams worth of clay. So we've got here the colours I'm using today. We've got the plum, white, lavender. This is mint, white, and their peppermint, and then the black. And the black I've actually split down, and I would split that down into half bits like that, because what we're going to do is going to do two blends of colours. This plum with the white lavender, and then a little bit of black will actually be on either end, and then we've got the mint, white, and the peppermint, and again we'll have a little bit of black on either end, but I will show you that when we get to it. So the first thing to do is to condition all of your clay. Just aim for a very rough rectangular shape. Doesn't have to be exact, just a rough rectangular shape, and probably on a medium setting of your pasta machine. If anyone has any problems with conditioning clay, I do have a video telling you how to do that, and I will post the details in the links below the video. So I've conditioned all the clays thoroughly and put them through on setting 3 on my pasta machine, which is a medium thick setting. I'm just going to work on one set at a time, so I put them together so you can see which way I'm going to go. So those ones are going together in a blend with the blacks on the end, and then these ones are going to go together. So I'll put this on one side just for a little bit whilst we work on the blue combination. Now you can see I've put them roughly, and it is very roughly, into oblong or rectangular shapes. Now I'm going to do something slightly different from the normal Skinner blend here, because what I want is a blend through where I've got a very clear demarcation of the white in the middle and then a little bit on the black on either end. So what I'm going to do, I'm actually just going to chop straight down these, layer them all up together, and then just very slightly overlap and press that one in. Very slightly overlap and press that one in. And then because I've got 2 layers of each of these, I want a bit of black on either end. So what I'm actually going to do is to chop that into 4 little pieces. So I've got a little bit of black, 2 layers of black on that end just pushed in, and 2 layers of black on that end just pushed in. And I'll just give them a little bit of a roll, just to make sure they're all nicely joined together. And now I'll take you over to the pasta machine to show you how we're going to get the blend we need for the next bit. Okay, so here's the blend that we've got, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to fold it in half and put it back through the pasta machine, constantly putting the fold at the bottom and really concentrating on this white in the middle. Now I'll do that a few times just to make sure all the clays are starting to come together, and then I'll show you what we're going to do and how we're going to just skew it ever so slightly. The other thing is I've got 4 layers of clay effectively here, so I'm going to change from setting number 3 on my pasta machine to a thicker setting, so I'm going to go up to setting number 2. As it comes through, I'm going to collect it in my hand and constantly fold bottom to top. If you've seen my video on Skinner blends, you'll know that I also flip it round that way. That's as a result of a tip Sarah Shriver gave in one of her workshops years ago, which I've been doing ever since. But once you've started putting polymer clay through a pasta machine, the rollers tend to go slightly out of being completely straight, and if you've ever wondered why you get your very sort of weird lumps, that's why. It's because your rollers would have become slightly distorted as a result of using polymer clay. So that was an invaluable tip from Sarah Shriver. She is a most amazing polymer clay artist. So you'll see that I keep swapping it around as I go and passing them through the pasta machine. I'm not worried about the odd bits of colour that come out. They're all going to come out in the wash, don't worry too much. What I am going to do though is, I'm getting quite a nice blend here and here, but I'm just going to skew it ever so slightly. So by that I mean, rather than joining it up so those whites join completely up, I'm just going to gently move it slightly over, but so I've still got a bit which is going to be all white. We'll do it slightly less than that. So I've still got a nice bit that's going to be all white. Just that one time, just skew it, put it back through, and then carry on doing what I've been doing, putting it through, folding it in half, and putting it back through till the blend starts to come through. So there you see we've got our blend, and that's exactly what I wanted to happen. A nice white stripe down the middle with quite a quick blend into the colours on either side, and then when it gets to the dark, again quite a quick blend. So though we've got a nice bit of dark on the side, we've actually got quite a quick blend and quite a nice chunk of our colour either side. So what I now need to do is I need to put this through to make ourselves a nice concertina block of polymer clay. So because I've got quite a large bit here, I'm going to chop that in half and then half again, so I end up with 4 strips. Now obviously I'm going to do this down on my cutting surface. I'll bring you back when I've done all those, and I'm going to lay them on top of each other nice and neatly stacked. Okay, so there's my stack of 4 layers. Because 4 layers would be too much to go through setting 2 of the pasta machine to start with, I'm going to take my roller and on the flat of my work surface I'm just going to roll over the whole length of these just to make this ever so slightly thinner and to make sure all 4 of those layers are nicely put together. Okay, so I've given it a roll. So now I've given it a roll, I can put it back through the pasta machine on that same setting number 2, this way down to give myself a long thin strip. So one nice thin strip. What I need to do now is down to a very thin setting, because we want to get this as thin as is possible on the pasta machine you are using. If you know your machine is going to shred your clay, then go down one setting at a time, thinner and thinner and thinner, till you get to your thinnest usable setting. Because I know my machine is a good one, I know I can go from setting 2 all the way down to my thinnest setting, which is setting number 9, straight away. So that's what I'm going to do, putting it back through this way down to give myself a really, really long, thin piece of polymer clay. And don't forget, each time you go down a setting on your pasta machine, just turn the candle a couple of times clockwise, just to clear out any clay that's stuck underneath the rollers. So all we need to do now is start concertinaing this from one end, and I'm going to do it a thickness probably about 3/4 of an inch, so about 2 centimetres wide, and just start at one end and then just go backwards and forwards, keeping it, if you can, a nice even stack. If yours breaks, like mine actually has that, didn't you notice that? It's because I moved the board and put it down on it. That's absolutely no problem. Just patch it in where it joins, so keep going till you get to the end. As I say, just patch it on, not a problem. But probably best if you don't move your board and put it down on your Skinner blend. So I'm just going backwards and forwards in a nice easy fashion. I am trying to make sure I don't get any air trapped in the folds as I go, but we're going to be manipulating this a lot, so it's not the end of the world at this stage if you do. All the way up to the other end, and then I'm just going to press down on the ends just slightly to give myself more of an even stack, and we're going to change the shape of that in just a moment. So what we end up with is 2 canes very similar like this, with a nice, show that ends which is neater, with a nice mix up to the white and then to the dark at either side. They should be roughly the same size, and I've just made mine so they are roughly the same size. And what we're going to do, we're actually going to make 2 different canes from these 2 simple elements. So the first thing we need to do is to get this into a more usable shape. So I'm going to want to make this, extend it, reduce it till it's about 4 inches long and about 3/4 of an inch wide. Now I'm doing it in inches because this is an easy to use sheet. If you want it in centimetres, so that would be 10 centimetres and probably just over 2 centimetres wide. But anyway, let's go for that. So what I'm going to do when I reduce is I'm just pressing in at the middle, turning it, pressing in, turning and pressing in. And as you press in and pull, so it starts to become longer. So I'm going to take away the measuring sheet for a minute because that slides around a lot and it's easier to do this on a flat surface. because I'm using Fimo Soft, the clay, the black clay in particular, is going to transfer to my hands and transfer onto this. But don't worry about this bit getting mucky, because we're going to turn it in a way in a moment, so you're going to actually have a black layer up against this, so don't worry about that at all. So all I'm doing, just keep going in, gently pressing in, whilst pulling it longer. So I'm working with both hands, you can work with one hand, turn it over every so often. I have a tendency, my right hand is my stronger hand, so I tend to press in more with my right hand than what I do with my left. So I'll just keep working. And when it's got to around 4 inches in length, 10 centimetres, I will swap over to the measuring sheet, because from this point on we do, if possible, need to try and keep relatively neat. You can just do that occasionally, because where you've pressed in you'll have little indentations where your fingers have gone, so just going to straighten that out. And what I'm looking to do is I'm looking to get a piece that's nice and even the whole way over. So I'm just going to turn each side as I go and try and make sure that it's about that 3/4 of an inch size, because I want the face when you cut through of this to be as square as possible. Okay, that's not too bad. I don't need it to be absolutely pristine at this stage, that will come in a moment, but I'm going to try and make it just quite nice. So I'm going to repeat that to do exactly the same with this purple one, and I'll bring you back when I've got them both at the same stage. Okay, so they've both gone slightly over the 4 inches, which is fine because we obviously always get distortion on either end. So the first thing I'm going to do is just chop off those ends. Put those to one side. We can always use those for the scrap bits of the underneath of the pendant later. And then I'm going to chop down in the middle. And those two pieces we're going to put on one side. I'm going to open them out, put them on one side for a moment, because that'll be the second cane. But to start with, we're doing this first cane, so I'm going to chop those into equal parts. So we should end up with 4 pieces, all the same, roughly the same height. Pull them apart slightly, and we're going to put them together like this. So I'm going to put that one together like that. This one's going to be turning like that, and I'm going to put the turquoise into the middle, and then I'm going to repeat, but in the other direction, so they end up like that. So I've got both purples going towards each other and both the turquoise going towards each other. And I'm just going to press down just slightly, just at the moment, just to make sure those 4 blocks are nicely pushed together. Because now the fun bit, you know me, I don't want a square cane, I want a triangular cane. So I'm going to choose which side I'm going to press down. And I am going to press down, on this turquoise side. And by pressing down, I literally mean I'm going to hold it onto my tile here, and I'm going to press down and press and press and press until this bit flattens off and these 2 points here go to the side. I shall do that. Let me do it on a tile so I can show you as I go. So I'm going to press firmly down on both these sides. See, it's starting to go. Until it's completely down in a triangular form. I can now take it off, and I need to reduce this time, so pull it longer and wider while pressing in till it's about 2 inches, 5 centimetres in length, just long enough that I can cut halves and put it together to make a usable cane. Now where I press down, obviously I've got some distortion. Can you see that this ends, do it that way, yes. So you can see that both the top and both the bottom ends here have come out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to press it down flat on my tile and pull the other sides to even it out, to give myself a flatter, more usable piece. So as I say, keep working down, just pulling in or pushing in and pulling it longer. So you've got till about 2 inches in length. And then we will chop down through. So I'm going to use the measuring sheet, just put it roughly up so I can see where we're going, and with your blade chop neatly down through the middle. Now there are various ways you can put this together. So as you saw, I picked it up and put it together like that, and that will give you a very nice effect, and I'll show you later at the very end one of the effects it can give you. However, what I'm going to do is put it together like this, and the way to remember it to make sure the top and bottom both add up, is you're going to end up with this giving you a nice sort of V pattern as it goes. Okay, and that way you will get the pattern that we're going for, this double cross pattern. I've only experimented putting it together 2 different ways so far. You will get a different pattern every single time you put it together, and the great thing about polymer clay, as you know, there's no such thing as wrong. So however you put it together, however yours comes out will be fantastic, so don't ever worry about putting it together if you don't do it exactly the same way as I do. Okay, we've now got very much a diamond shape here, but we want to make this into a square cane. So we've already got our 4 straight sides, and all I want to do is just change the angles. So I'm just pushing in on this corner that's really sort of quite a diamond shape, both top and bottom. And can you see how doing that I'm creating more of a square shape? And once you've got it to a stage that's more or less usable, start doing it on your work surface. I'm just going to move off there again. Now, as before, these ends will have pushed out, so flatten it down by putting them flat onto your work surface, because you want to make as much of a usable cane as you can by minimising the distortion on either end. And once you've got it going, just start reducing that down now into a square cane. And with the amount we've got, we should be able to reduce this again, that magic number, 4 inches or 10 centimetres, and again about 3/4 of an inch wide, so just over 2 centimetres wide. So I will stop talking and carry on reducing this every so often, paying attention to the ends until I've got it to that stage. Okay, so we've got it just more than 4 inches, and now what I'm going to do is it's going to be slightly less, I think, with the amount of clay I chopped off, because I obviously chopped off quite a bit on the ends, slightly less than that 3/4 of an inch, which doesn't matter as long as I make sure it's the same on every single side. So I'm just going to adjust where it is. And once I've made sure it's exactly the same, or as close as I can get it, I'm going to pick the whole thing up. Because, as I said before, where you've pressed down with your thumbs and fingers, you will have made little grooves and indents. So with a nice clean rolling pin, just roll over each side to make it flatter. And then I want to concentrate on these corners. I want these corners to be nice and sharp. So I'm going to go along every edge, and with my thumb and fingers just pinch the edges nice and sharp. Because that means when we put our 4 pieces together, we won't have any of that gapping in the middle, which you get if you've got rounded corners. So having done all 4, I'm just going to gently roll again, get it as flat as I can. Then I'll just double check to make sure that each side is as even as I can get it. And then so I've put it on my measuring sheet, so it's just wide of the 4 inches, but I've got the same amount of excess on either side. And we're going to chop down the middle and lift our 2 pieces up. And you want to join them together so that this V that we had previously is on the outside edge, and you can check with the registration marks with that colour that you can see down there. Actually put that up and check that that's meeting up as evenly as you can on both sides. Put that back down on your measuring sheet, and I'm just going to take off distorted bits I know are from that end. That end always tends to be slightly wider as well, so I'm just going to even that down and then chop down evenly through the middle. And when you pick it up and put it back together, you should end up with your double cross cane. And what we've got is a nice cane with a nice sort of border on the outside. What I need to do now is to get this down so that that is 1 inch or 2.5 centimetres on either side. And I'll again do that by using my measuring sheet. So I'm just going to very gently go all the way down till I've got that to the size I need. As before, I'm just going to roll over each edge just to make sure it's nice and flat. Make sure I've got nice sharp corners. And then, working from my neater end, I'm going to take off one slice. Take off the distorted end and then cut down. Now, if you've got one of the slicing machines where you can take nice even slices, then set up what you would like as a nice even slice and take one slice of this, and then we make the second cane. You're going to need 6 slices. If you're doing it by hand or by eye, you could always leave this one to one side for a moment and then get the second cane up and running and then take them all the slices off at the same time. However, I know roughly the size I'm going to take off, so I will take off one even slice. And I'm going to put it on here just to check whether my inch is okay, because obviously even just slicing through, you kind of cut that down. And because this is going to be the middle part of our pendant, I'm just going to check and see that it's all nicely even and straight, because don't forget you can pull and manipulate this particular piece of clay if you need to get it to the shape and size that you want to. But I'm happy with that, so that'll be the middle part of our pendant, so I'm going to put that on one side and then we'll come back to the second part of the cane. Okay, so let's go on to cane number 2, exactly the same. Chop down to give us our 4 pieces, except this time I'm going to orient them slightly different ways. So I'm going to have the light pink on the inside and the lighter blue going towards the middle. So say orientated a different way. As before, press down slightly to make sure that those 4 are nicely joined in. And whereas last time I pushed down on the blue side, this time I'm going to push down on the purple side. So doing exactly the same, I've just orientated it slightly different. So as before, push down, start flattening that off, keep going. It goes all the way down. Once we've got our triangle, start reducing it till it's about 2 inches. Chop evenly down the middle. Put the 2 bits together, and then we're going to change that diamond again to push in to create more of a square shape. And once that's done, reduce down to it's about 4 inches, 10 centimetres in length again. As before, make sure it's even on all 4 sides, then we'll give it a roll. Pinch down all the sides to make sure those corners are really sharp. And then find the middle point. So we're actually almost 5 inches here, so I'm going to take it over till I find the middle point, which will be about here. Chop down through, put it together. Same thing as before, take off the excess. Find the middle point, chop down through. And put your pieces together. So if we look at our first one and look at our second one, we can see it's the same pattern. So what I'm going to do now is reduce this one down to make this one exactly 1 inch square, same as this one is. So having got it to that stage, you can, of course, if you want to, just leave it like that and leave it with big patterns and have big patterns. So you take 1, 2, 3 slices, 4, 5, 6, and that will become clear in a moment or two when I show you the rest of the stage. However, I quite like it when this goes to a smaller size. So I'm going to show you how to reduce this and how to get a different orientation. I'm just going to show you as well, because I haven't really mentioned why it's called the double cross. So here's if you put 4 pieces of your big cane together, that's the pattern you get, and this is why I called it the double cross cane, because you've got the crosses in the middle, and then when you put these pieces together, because you've got this nice V shape on the end, you get a cross right in the middle as well. So with this one, I don't want to have them looking in the same direction, so I don't want to have, this is very much the crosses going that way, crosses going that way. I want to change the way that's gone. So what you can see just about, as I put it together here, can you see the crease lines? In fact, I'm going to re-emphasise the crease lines by pressing out. So if it's completely dark like mine is, just re-emphasise those crease lines by giving yourself a little groove. What I want to do now is I want to make the corners into the flats and the flats into the corners. And the easiest way of doing this is by pressing down along your square and changing the orientation of it. And I'm using these lines as a guide. So I like to do it along the whole length at the same time if I can, by using both fingers of both hands. And what I'm going to end up with, and what I'm looking for, is that those lines that I've marked should be the corners of my new cane. So can you see here how the lines are coming out as the corners? Once you've got that more or less going, then start reducing as per normal. And what I want to do is I want to make this long enough that I can take 4 nice pieces from it. So I'm going to aim again about 4 inches, 10 centimetres in length. Yep, we're about spot on. So as before, I'm going to check that each side is the same width, and then when I've done that, I'm going to make sure I've got very nice sharp corners, give it a roll along each side, and I'll come back and chat once we've got that and we got to the cutting stage. Now when you're doing this, you want to make sure it doesn't go any smaller than ½ an inch width across each of these faces, because when we put our 4 pieces together, we need it to be at least 1 inch to match up with our other cane. So having put that across, centre it nicely, chop down the middle, pick your 2 pieces up, put them together, make sure joined neatly at the other end. As always, chop off any distortion from that end. Centre the piece you've got left, chop down through and put your pieces together. And there you see we've got a nice sort of 4 small squares, and that will give a good contrast in direction to the way this one's going, because whereas this one's going this way, these ones are now going on the diagonal. And that sort of thing just adds a little something else when you're putting pieces together in a composition. So I'm going to take a bit of time now, get this down to 1 inch square, so 1 inch on all of 4 sides. I'm just going to neaten off the end. A size match. Yes, they are now both the same size. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to cut 6 slices, the same thickness as I cut my original slice. And when these pieces go together, the main piece is going to sit like that, and these other pieces are going to sit around about. So when you've got your first piece, you need to look for a tell, something which is going to show where the pattern's ever so slightly different, so you know which side is going to go next to each side. This bit here, the blue here, is a lot further up than the pink is, and the blue is on that side. So that's going to say these two are pretty even, but this one, that one is a lot bigger than that one. So that is going to be my tell. So when you put them together, and we're just putting them together properly at the moment because we're about to put some background, I'm just putting it together to check that I've got the right sizes, don't need to cut any more pieces. I will find that tell. So there we go, that was the tell, the pink was longer there. So you put that piece there, and then you flip it over, because I then know that that piece is going to marry up perfectly with that piece. It's the same again. Find your tell, which is that pink piece there. So it'll cross that way, and then it'll cross that way. And I know that one will marry up perfectly. It's the same with this one. Where's the extra long bit? It's there. So we're going to go over there and down to here. And I've now got the extra long bit here. So I know extra long bit's there. So that one's going there. And then this last one, it's there, so going there, and then that one's going over that way. So having got them roughly in the right size and place, I'm just going to check that when I put my piece on, which will be there, that does cover and that is big enough. So that's our pieces all set in. So what we need to do now is to get some background colour. And I'm going to take some of these offcuts, these leftover pieces, the distortions from the end, put them all back through the pasta machine on a medium setting, so setting number 3, mix up a whole new colour. So as I keep putting these through, folding top to bottom, and going through, I'll end up with a whole new mix of colour. And the new colour I make should probably be some sort of greyishy sort of colour. That'll be the background for the pendant we're about to do. So I'm just checking that there is enough there, which there is if I put it on the diagonal like that. So having put that one on, I can start fitting these into place. I'm going to put them roughly to start with, and then I'll go back to finesse next. Okay, so now I've got them roughly in place. I'm going to start with my main piece. And because I've now got it on this backing clay, I've got time to spend a bit of time and make sure they sit very nicely next to each other. Because this clay bends away, so I can make sure that the top is marrying up. I'm looking at all these places where the pinks and the blues join, making sure that they're nicely together. Doesn't matter so much about where it comes next to this one, because obviously it's not matching with that one at the moment. Put that one on there, so that's those 3 done. And then this one. Going to come in there, and then this one will come in there. And because I spent that time making sure they were the right way round earlier, I don't have to spend too long at this stage fitting them all in. So what I'm going to do now is to start with the knitting needle. I'm just going to close up just by rolling. See, I'm just rolling on this part, not on the point, just on this part, rolling over any seams just to make sure there's no gaps. It's easier at this stage to be able to see what it is you're doing. There's slightly more control when you've got something small like this. And if you want to, if it's easier, you can actually pick the sheet up, so you can actually bend them slightly, particularly if you've got, like I have here, a bit of a difference in height. When you've got that all done, get yourself a piece of the baking sheet or tracing paper. Find your same stainless steel soap, and in small circular motions, just start going around. It's all neat and tidy. Have a look. Make sure there's no glaring gaps or holes. And what I am going to do here, because it's pushed over slightly here, where that layer of clay was slightly less thick, it has distorted my middle square slightly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick it up. Well, I have two options. I can either pull this one out this way, which is probably the easiest way to do it. So I'm just going to pull that side out till it matches that side. So don't ever forget that you can do that in polymer clay. You can just pull your clay until it evens up. So now I'm happy that I've got a nice even piece. I can take my shape, and this is where these are so fantastic, having these inside shapes, because I can lay it down and do it in such a way that this is right on the edge of the shape. And then have a very good look. Make sure you have placed this exactly even. Look to check you've got the same amount of pattern here, same here, and all the way down. And if not, as I said, just pull it around. So I'm just going to check to make sure that, let me put it there so you can see, I'm going to check that, make sure that's completely even. Okay, so I moved it slightly, so I'm now happy that it is. It was this bit in particular down here I was noticing wasn't quite even, whereas now it is. And when you're happy, holding it in place with your craft knife, very carefully, cut all the way around the outside. And if you cut those two sides to pull away the excess clay, if you're lucky you might have enough here to, I don't know, make a pair of earrings or something out of it. Use one of the smaller shapes just to cut yourself out a nice little egg shape there. So there we have our piece. So just check, make sure you cut nice and neatly around the outside and peel off the shape, and there is your pendant shape. But what's nice is if we just change the shape of it. Because we've cut around the outside of a template, that line is very sharp and there's no pulling down or beveling around the edge. So what I like to do is just very gently with my thumb, I'm just going to curve over or just smooth off that sharp top edge. Nothing more than that at this stage. Okay, and now you can start to bend it slightly. You can see what I'm doing? I'm bending the shape. Keeping in mind that this is my midpoint. I'm going to use my finger to curve it around my finger. And then when you've got to a stage where you're happy, start putting it down on your surface and curve until this bit goes flat down on your work surface. And then do the same with the bottom piece. So it's flat down on your work surface. So you've got a nice shape to your piece. Take a bit of time to make sure it's nice and central. So once your piece is ready for baking, just take your small piece of card that you've created a nice sort of curve on, turn that over, pop it on, and then bake flat on the tile and tent the whole piece in a piece of foil, just to make sure that if your oven spikes during the baking or curing process, that the clay doesn't burn. And I'll bring you back when that's done. Okay, so here's our piece finished. It's all done and ready to go. And what we're going to do now, I'm going to create a little hanging space to actually make it into a pendant. So if you're using jump rings, and if you've got quite a deep area in there, you can actually just sit your jump ring in. Because I haven't got too much of an area in there, I'm actually going to create myself a little shallow groove, just using this is a piece of aluminium wire, so it's any wire would be good for this. Just use something that's the right size and thickness what you want. So I'm just going to take my pliers, these are round nose pliers, and I'm just going to create a double loop by just twisting it round. Can you see that? It's quite a small loop, so that'll fit better into my area. So I'm just going to chop off the excess, and then with my pliers still in that bit, I'm just going to fold these round so that when it sits in, it's got somewhere really nice and deep to sit in. And I'm just going to take off a little excess from either end, just making sure it doesn't ping off, and put those bits nicely away. I'll put them straight into a bin otherwise they have a tendency to catch up in your clay, so just take a little bit extra off there as well, because I've only got a little area I want to add it into. So I'll just put those in the bin. And now I've got a piece that can sit into the end of my pendant like that. So I'm going to take a little bit of scrap clay left over from the bits we had. I've just torn a bit off the end here because that matches completely what we've got on the back. And I'm just going to press that down in. I will take off the excess carefully just by running the blade flat across the cured clay. And then at this stage I will just neaten off the bottom there to give ourselves a nice finished piece. And now I need to inset this in the middle of my piece. So I'm going to use my knitting needle and just use a knitting needle just to find a place right in the centre and press that down firmly into the clay underneath it. And then you can just pull the clay back over the top of it to give yourself a nice neat finish. When you've got it nicely embedded, just check that it's going to hang properly by holding it upright. You then want to rebake exactly the same before, upside down on your piece of curved card, and again bake as according to the manufacturer's instructions for the brand of clay you are using. So once that's done, I will bring you back and we'll go through the last part and show you the finished piece. Okay, so here's the piece finished, baked, and I've sanded and polished it. So just to go through sanding, I use the wet dry sandpaper. I use 240 grit, 600, 1000, 1500 and up to 2000, and then I will just polish it. There's no wax or anything applied to it, and goes straight onto a polishing mop. If you've got a small sort of handheld tool, something like a Dremel, then one of these unstitched, really fluffy polishing mops is really good. If you've got, like I have as well, something like a bench grinder, then again this is just an unstitched polishing mop that you can buy, and it just threads onto your bench grinder, and both of those will give you a really lovely shiny finish to your piece if that's what you're going for. So all I need to do now is add some chain or bead something onto the back of it, put a bit of cord or thread through, and I have a finished pendant. So here are another couple of other examples, different colourways and slightly different way of doing it. So this one did exactly the same way. The colours I used were emerald green, Pacific blue, the plum again, and then raspberry. And because this one, when I put it together, the centre part was a little bit skewy for slightly off, all I've done is inset chaton, the little crystal which has got the pointed bottom, and I pressed it in place before baking. Then after baking, just pinged it out with my fingernail, sanded and polished, and then I've just glued it back in. And this one, the colours on this one, so I've got the plum again through to the peppermint, and then I've got apple green through to flamingo. And on this one, do you remember I was saying when we were putting the pieces together, if you put it a slightly different way to get a different pattern? I did put them together slightly differently, and this is the pattern I got here. As you can just see, it is different. It's orientated the other way around. And then, but the same again, doing exactly the same, but on the underneath to get a reverse smaller pattern. So there we go, that's the end of this tutorial. So those are the finished pieces that I've made with the slightly different designs and all the different colourways. And obviously there's loads more colourways and loads of other opportunities to try all sorts of bits and pieces. So just experiment and have fun. I hope you enjoyed that tutorial. As always, thank you so much for all those who've subscribed. I really do appreciate your support in watching the videos. And if you enjoyed that one, then feel free to subscribe or like the video and come and see me next time. I think that's it for now. Thanks as always for watching. Bye.